Everybody, and welcome to another tier list video going over the bounty hunters today. One of my favorite factions, one of the most fun factions in the game. Really unique in that they all have leadership abilities and they all have contracts getting permanent buffs once they complete a certain task, making it a very fun team to use and tons of theory crafting to do with it. So going through alphabetically, and they are all ranked in relation to each other. So again, it's not like a marquee ranking, it's not like the journey guide ranking. It's just going to be a relative power among them is how it determines and shapes out. First up, we got Aura Singh, and I think this was generous. I put her in the low B tier. She has plenty of use as a leader just because her contract is so easy to get off. She's more like a Mando insta payout, so he can get Annihilate off. She can do some stuns. She can get her damage ramped up. Otherwise, I mean, she's not that good. She was built to be specialized in raids in a format that doesn't really matter anymore because you can solo the raid. And if you are not able to solo the raid yet, she's not really going to help you just because she can do some extra damage in phase 3 of Heroic Sith Raid. Hith Raid. But yeah, so I think low B tier is generous enough for her. Next up, we got Boba Fett, one of the originals. And, you know, I think he's a little bit underrated, so I gave him high B tier. On land, he's not like perfect, of course. He's not a dominant force, but he does have AoE ability block, which is extremely useful in my opinion. He ignores taunts, he can use his rocket, and he can really destroy people if they have a lot of buffs, which also acts as a dispel if you need it. Doesn't do a ton of damage, but he can ramp up through that rocket. That second special, and his leadership is also interesting, and I hope I can show a clip here. I went against him in the one GAC match where I got accused of cheating in 3v3, and his leadership gave them so much health. They seemed like galactic legends or more for the amount of health he had. He gives max health equal to 50% of the total potency of all bounty hunter allies. So I think that works like if you have 500% potency, everyone gets plus 250% health, which is insane. They were taking multiple hundreds of thousands of damage and not dying. And it was just him, Boosh, and like Greedo, I think. I can't remember. So they weren't able to beat my Jedi Knight Revan, but it definitely took a long time to get through. And his contracts, it's okay. His leadership, he gives 15 speed for each debuffed enemy, which in 5s can work out to quite a lot. He gets a bonus turn once he gets his contract, and like for him personally, not for his whole team, and then plus 50 speed and a lot of extra defense penetration. Plus he's got a good ship, which is part of one of the most dominant fleets in the game, the Executor fleet. Next up, we got another Boba Fett, and you know, technically he might be able to go higher because he's good in territory wars, but I have no first-hand experience of this. I didn't give him his Omicrons. I haven't even seen or been exposed to much gameplay of him with them. He's probably the worst conquest character we've had yet, and he was one that I skipped buying the shards for. I still got him after like 5 or 6 of them just from red boxing or red crating, but I don't know, he was not worth it. I took him to Relic 5, and I don't know why. I really regret it. I wish I had those materials back. You don't really need him for anything right now. I mean, he stacks momentum, but without the Omicrons and TW, it's hard to gain much momentum in any other game mode. So he's not doing a ton of extra stuff. I know he deals damage extra. He throws that tenacity up. He has shield disruption in territory wars. But not really working out for me personally. Next up, we got Bosk, and Bosk is top of the A tier. I think Bosk still has the best leadership out of bounty hunters, especially for offense, but defense too. You know, he makes them super thick. They're getting extra defense when you're at full health. So it doesn't mean while they still have protection, although functionally it works like that most of the time. If they're at full health, they get like 100% extra defense. They have plus 50% protection or something. And your contract is just hitting the weakest enemy 10 times. And one thing that I noticed about his kit that I haven't thought about much is on his mass assist. If he's targeting the weakest enemy, the whole team reduces their cooldowns by 1. I didn't really know that. I was just brushing up on the kit, and that's a very powerful use of it. They're not doing as much damage, but that mass assist helps trigger his contract very fast, and he's a great tank. It's not really a sacrifice to throw up his taunt because he gets frenzy as well, and his basic is nothing much to speak of, but his payout is great. It gives 50 speed to the whole team for the rest of the match. He's also doing so much other stuff, like he has tons of extra stats for himself, plus 50% defense and max health while he's taunting, and he gains health steal on offense when he's tagging buffed enemies, but that's not as important. Leadership is constantly recovering health and protection from resisted or landed debuffs, and of course he has the best ship in the game, the most important ship in the game, Houndstooth, which would work with every fleet if not for the Executor, which really wants it nowadays. But going on over 4 years, it's been the most important ship in the game. Next up, we got the Imposter. We got Boosh Leia. I say she's an imposter. She's not really a bounty hunter. She's just pretending to be a bounty hunter. She's not really cartel, but those are her tags because Jabba did not have many options for an intimidating team or a strong team. It's just they didn't have much to work with. But she's actually very good. I really like her as a character. The thermal detonators are done right. She's much more threatening than, say, like Greedo or Zam with their thermal detonators. I think they actually do more damage than them. I think thermal detonators vary somehow. I heard that somewhere, and I think hers have a higher percent of their health damage that is given out. But she is great with Hut Cartel. She's my favorite new requirement for Jabba. She's assisting all the time on that team, and then also if an enemy still has deadly bluff, she's assisting once per turn when another Hut Cartel attacks. It's really helpful in galactic challenges, even if she is lower gear. I think you need the Zeta for everything to work with deadly bluff, but it's preventing out of turn attacks, which gave me trouble when I faced it with Jedi Knight Revan, because that's what it's all about. And yeah, I mean, she has the way to give out tons of thermals with her special and trigger all of them at once, which is very handy, both in PvP and in the galactic challenges. And once she gets payout, she inflicts more thermals on everyone, so she just hands out thermals like candy. Next up, we got Cad Bane, and I think this is generous to him, and the only reason he's ahead of Aura is because of his ship. His ship is so crucial to that Executor lineup. It wasn't required for Executor, but the bonus damage against breached enemies is amazing for the fleet, and it makes it way better than it would be otherwise. It's a big reason why it feels so good. Once they have breach, which is ubiquitous on that lineup, you just drain the enemy's health and protection so fast. You just chew through them so fast. On land, I mean, there's nothing special. He's the champion of the Hut Cartel for those that don't have a good Hut Cartel. I don't know if Bit Dynasty figured it out, but I definitely check on his videos to see how to beat these galactic challenges sometimes. But by now I know you just put Cad Bane in the lead, and he stacks bonus protection up, and he's got good evasion, and you just gotta make him survivable. Other than that, his basic, he double taps. Sometimes with accuracy down, kind of a weird debuff. He can stun and dispel, which is fine, but nothing special about him after that. Next up, we got Dengar, and I put him top of the C tier. That kind of doesn't feel right, but I have not had as much use for him lately, and this is from an endgame perspective. I think it would be boosted if he had a ship, which I'd love for him to get a ship. It seemed like they were going to give him a ship when the Executor came out because he's required for it, and he does have a ship in the lore, but he doesn't have it in game, and a developer knew the name of his ship, the Punishing One, anyway, still doesn't have it. His best role's on a boss team where he is acting kind of as a medic when he throws out all his bombs and inflicts debuffs, or there's a lot of potential debuffs inflicted, but the fact that they're either landing or being resisted, you kind of heal the whole boss team up because they're recovering health and protection from resisted debuffs. and he has a stun. He calls people to assist sometimes on his basic. He's stealthed all the time. He prevents stealth on opponents. This was pretty important in the early days of the Chewbacca event when you wanted to prevent R2D2 from getting stealth on everybody. But right now, I just have found less and less use for him because the good bounty hunter teams are pretty full. Next up, we got Embo, and I'm not that sweet on Embo. Low mid C tier for him. A lot of people like his lead. He gives counterattacks. He gets foresight. His territory war Omicron, it helps on a Jabba team, but I don't know. I think there's probably still better options for him. I don't have too much to say about him, but I don't like any kit that reduces your own max protection or makes you lose max protection, which his hat throw does. He can be critically hit, which is pretty great, but otherwise I don't really like him as a character. Next up we got Fennec Shand, and I put her just below Bosk in the A tier. She is amazing though. Out of all the bounty hunters, I think she has the highest damage potential, especially on Lord Vader. She's doing basically like up to 150,000 per basic against Lord Vader because she's stacking that up. And there's the armor shred out, and she gets her offense stacking. Lots of bonuses. She's not used as a leader typically, like even in 3v3 when she has less allies naturally. I don't think it's worth making her leader except against Lord Vader because that's the easiest payout to get. You just get it through dispelling debuffs. But again, she just hits like a truck against him. It's really quite useful. So that'll kind of still be her role for me in 5v5, is if I lose against Lord Vader. Maybe because they have a lot of dodge, she can clean it up easily because she deals special damage and dodge doesn't matter. And like I kind of mentioned earlier, she inflicts armor shred. And she's got that special debuff, which is more like a buff than a debuff because it gives out 50% offense, 10% speed, and 15% evasion, which is pretty crazy for a debuff. The only thing negative about it is minus 20% defense, which... so she's getting it dispelled all the time by Grief Karga, and she's stacking her offense for tenacity up, which I think I mentioned, but yeah, she's very strong. I wouldn't put her over Bosk because I think Bosk is super useful because of his ship as well. Houndstooth, best ship in the game, and Fennec isn't a great leader for bounty hunters. Next up, we got Greedo. I'm gonna put him in D tier. Maybe it's not kind of me to do that. He has some viability with Jabba and Rogue Sith Raid, which is fine, but I still don't think his uselessness in PvP is enough to bump him up there. He just doesn't have great stats, and while his basic is tantalizing because it could just go on and on forever, the odds say it just doesn't. It goes on a little bit, but whenever I need it to actually go off, he only gets one hit. He can remove turn meter and give it to himself, and stun if you have a Zeta, which is not a great use of a Zeta, but I don't know, he's just lackluster. He throws out thermals, but not impressed. He's probably the worst bounty hunter. Next up, we got Grief Karga, and Grief Karga is amazing. I love Grief Karga. He's right behind Fennec Shand, and I contemplated giving him higher because he is the most useful support bounty hunter. The only other support I think is Cad Bane, who doesn't really seem like a support. That doesn't make sense. But Grief is cleansing everyone. He's giving 50% turn meter if you have your payout, which is a big reason why the counter versus Lord Vader works. He's giving out retribution, tenacity up. He's just amazing. Calling a mass assist, which unlike Bosk, that you take a big damage penalty on those assists, he's giving a damage bonus. It's plus 10% or plus 30% if you have the Zeta and they have payouts activated. Even his basic is pretty decent. He heals up the team a little bit and he inflicts daze. But he's great. I love him. He is one of my favorites. He's one of my favorite characters in The Mandalorian just because he's played by Carl Weathers, which is awesome. And the payout he gets for himself is he dispels everything from all bounty hunter allies, and they all recover full health and protection, which is great. He's also staying stealthed, and he's reducing his cooldowns all the time. When he's inflicted with a debuff, he reduces his cooldowns. So against Lord Vader, that happens all the time. And it happens a lot against others as well. Next up, we got IG-88. And he's not good. I mean, he gets mid C tier because of his ship. Which, I mean, I don't know how low he'd go otherwise. He can throw out kind of healing. Well, it's kind of a de facto healing immunity. If you have a Zeta, target lock acts like healing immunity. Nowadays, I kind of throw him with my Swordy team because AoE does have a lot of damage potential under Swordy and with T3 there. And his ship is decent. It's good with Executor. But otherwise, he's not that great himself. What's good about him is he's a droid, so he can go on other teams. But that's about it. And next up, we got the big guy himself, Jabba the Hutt. And in a relative ranking to each other, I don't think there's anything that could make a small S tier, like Gas and Jedi, or like Darth Malgus with the Sith. Jabba stands alone, just spoiler, in the S tier, because he's a galactic legend. He's very worth it to get from a game economic standpoint because of all the extra mod stuff you can get with him. But he is a great team. He's a great defensive team in GAC and Territory War. And I think I might have snubbed him a little bit in my Galactic Legend ranking. But I am working on him, and I'll get him soon, in a couple months probably. And then I'll be able to better evaluate him. But going against him is very tricky. He's like the only Galactic Legend that counters Jedi Master Kenobi, pretty much hard counters on offense and on defense a lot too, except in 3v3s. You can beat him in 3v3s. But his kit is too bloated to go into any kind of depth here, but he's not really attacking much, and it's reliant on thermal detonators and hiding behind Gersantin. But when you get to just him himself, he can be pretty hard to kill as well. Next up, we got the granddaddy of all clones and father of Boba Fett, Jango Fett. He's kind of the original bounty hunter in a lot of ways in the movies. But I love what he does. He's so strong. He's one of the hardest hitting bounty hunters. He used to be the hardest hitting because he gets 100% defense penetration in his unique. He also gets plus 50% health in the unique, which is pretty impressive. But I love what he does as far as a weapon, offensive weapon. He double taps on his basic if they're debuffed, and it does a ton of damage each time. You can just wreck teams. I wrecked a Qui-Gon team with him under Newt in 3v3 because he works better as a separatist a lot of times than a bounty hunter because he automatically gets his contract that has damage immunity. And what else does he get? He gets 50% offense, so that's pretty crazy. I love his rocket, the first special, because it's doing tons of damage and healing immunity. Pretty great. He can give burning to everyone and reduce the max health of his target. And his leadership is pretty tricky as well if you're not used to it. It gives 30 speed to all scoundrel allies, not just bounty hunters, so it's pretty flexible. And it really is manipulating their ability to land debuffs. They lose potency for each debuff on your team. So after a while, they're not going to be landing anything unless they have irresistible debuffs, which isn't super... It's not super ubiquitous, but of course that's happening with like Lord Vader and stuff. But he's really strong. If there's one ship in the game I could get added, it would be his Slave 1, although that would probably just be exacerbating how much better the Executor is than every other fleet, and it'd probably make it better than Profundity, or it would be disappointing if it didn't. Next up, we got Chrysanthemum, and I haven't had a ton of opportunity to use him, but just going against him, I think he merits low A tier. He is a great tank, super durable, really hard to get through on that Jabba team. I don't know a ton about his kit yet. He's not really that fast, but he's really just durable, and you have to get through him. He's going to revive even if you get through him once Jabba takes a turn. And yeah, I would like to learn more about him at some point, but I got to wait until I actually got him developed. I don't think his leadership is very useful. He does deal a ton of damage though, so he is limited to the bottom of A tier. Next up, we got the OG Mandalorian, and he sits in the middle of A tier, just under Grief Karga. This differs from my 2020 Marquee ranking, and I was back and forth there too, but I really think Grief just has more flexibility and use, and he's more important to a team. Although Mando, his kit is very simple but very effective. It's all about that disintegrate ability, which is an annihilate, and you can get to it way faster than like Nihilus can. Just as soon as you get your contract and you have crit damage or crit chance on him, he can annihilate someone. And plenty of teams are based around this. This is why Aura Singh has viability. This is why you want to get the contracts super fast, even faster than you used to want to get to them. He does some good damage, but he's not like a damage dealer like Django. It's all about the disintegrate, and he's reducing that cooldown when he crits. He can call an ally to assist, which is great, and granting turn meter through critical hits is very strong as well when you have that Zeta. His leadership isn't used as much, although I'm sure you could find a niche for it because you just need to score critical hits against enemies 20 times while buffed. Theoretically, that could be pretty easy. I kind of wish the Razor Crest was with him, so it would be easier to get and more accessible, but that is with Beskar Armor Mando and not him. And I'm sure you can guess who's last alphabetically. It is Zam Wessel, and I put her mid B tier. That's as high as I could bump her with, even with my Grand Arena bias, because she just sits there and speeds people up in Grand Arena, which is very useful, but she's totally useless outside of Grand Arena. She used to be good in Conquest when thermal detonators were everywhere, and she could just go around basicking and taking an extra turn every time all the thermals blew up. But yeah, I mean, her extra attacks don't do much. She has one damaging attack. She's got one that, like, puts, I don't know, evasion down or something on people. Not very important. And then she throws out some thermals. But really, all there is to her is her stat sharing, tons of speed, which really helps bounty hunters in GAC. So that's why she gets this high. Otherwise, she'd be probably D down there with Greedo. So that's it. I know people have a lot of opinions about bounty hunters, so I'm sure I could hear a lot of disagreement or rearranging, but this is as best as I can figure for it. Bouge and Kirsan, less use with them. I still am impressed with them. But overall, I love this faction, and I can't wait to get Jabba. So let me know what you think, and hope to see you next time.